Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Back again, 21st of April. This is the speaking tutorial for today, Wednesday, 21st of April. If you can't join me now, that's okay. Otherwise, you will be able to access the video. Today, we're having a look at a couple of things. The first thing we're looking at is what the examiner marks you on, the 4 categories that the examiner is going to mark you on. You may already be familiar with these 4 categories, but if you're not, I'm going to take you through them very briefly. And then we're going to have a wee look at some pronunciation features of the English language, which you may not be aware of, and you may have it in your mind about how to pronounce certain words when in fact they're pronounced differently. Okay, so let's get started. The Ielts speaking marking criteria is based on four categories, basically. We have, the first one is fluency and coherence. Sorry, I'll start that again. Sorry, I just want to make that a bit... fluent. No, that's a bit too big. Sorry. How about that one? Fluency and coherence is the first criteria that you will be marked on. So what does this mean? Fluency and coherence. Well, fluency refers to how fluent you can speak, and fluence in terms of, do you pause a lot, or do you hesitate a lot, or do you need to correct yourself a lot? Do you just keep talking naturally until the examiner asks you the next question? So that's what fluency means. Okay, coherence is also part of fluency, but it's slightly different in the way that coherence refers to what's called cohesive devices or discourse markers, which are used to help the listener follow what you are saying. So these sorts of phrases would be things like, for example, or on the other hand, or now I'm going to tell you, or in conclusion. They're basically just phrases to help the listener make sense of what you are saying, so that it has some sort of organization and it's easy to follow. So that's the first thing, fluency and coherence. So of course, out of the 100%, which is the whole score, this is worth 25%. Fluency and coherence is worth 25%. Okay, so the next thing that you're going to be marked on is so some tips to increase your score for fluency and cohesion. Connect your sentences by linking words and signposts. So linking words, phrases such as in addition, furthermore, on the other hand, in contrast, but, as a result. And signposting language is things like, now I'm going to talk to you about, or we have seen today, or something like that, just to help the audience, the listener, follow what you have said and what you are going to say. Fluency can also be enhanced by extending your answers. So when you extend your answers, that means that you give more information. You don't just say one sentence. Okay, you keep going. You say the main idea, but then you might want to give some examples or some explanation to that main point. So extending and giving details is another way to improve your fluency. Okay, the next one is obviously something that takes a lot of practice. Speak smoothly and continuously. So how do you think people can learn to speak continuously? Well, there is one golden rule, and I'll just try and type it here, and it's called repetition. No, that's not going to work. Repetition. Okay, I can't really type it very well. Anyway, you know, oh, maybe I can use the text box. Okay, use the text box. Repetition. R-E-P-E-T. So repetition is a way for you to get more fluent. Okay, repetition. So when you're talking to somebody about the same topic over and over again, that increases your fluency. Although it may seem boring and tedious, it's still one way to improve fluency. Okay. The next thing that you can do, the next criteria that you're marked on is called lexical resource. Lexical resource is to do with your vocabulary, how many words you know, what your range is like. So in terms of do you know how to describe things? Do you know how to describe any type of situation? So basically vocabulary is all to do with what words you know and what phrases you know, and it's also to do with paraphrasing. Paraphrasing, so being able to paraphrase. That means saying the same thing using different words. That's a skill that not everybody has, but if you can work on that, that would increase your chances. Yeah, so use a wide range of vocabulary, discuss different topics freely, using appropriate words, speak formally or semi-formally. So this is also interesting because when you use informal language, because it shows that you know some slang. All right. Oh, why did that go? It shows that you know some slang. Some slang language is okay if it's appropriate for your topic. Less common expressions are okay. You don't have to you don't have to speak as you would write in the Ielts test, which is very more academically informal. Okay, so once again, that criteria is worth 25%. Of the total score, 25%. So moving on to the next criteria, which is pronunciation, and that's all about how you sound when you speak. There's lots of different features of pronunciation, and one of the best ways to improve your pronunciation is to listen to native speakers. Oh, hi Neela, hi Manjit, how are you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay, Neela? And Manjit, hi. So one of the best ways to improve, just to improve your pronunciation is, doesn't mention it here, although it might do, use correct intonations. My advice for how to practice pronunciation, if you can, let me just type it in here, the best way to improve pronunciation is to listen carefully to native speakers. Now, this can be either in person. I know, Neela, you're not in New Zealand, but Manjit, maybe you are, talking to people just wherever you go and listening to their accents, and especially if you've got Kiwi friends, that would be great. If you're not able to speak to native people, you can listen to YouTube clips. You can watch movies. You can listen to podcasts. So all of these things are really, really, really useful. Just remember that there are different accents in English, just like there would be in any other language. Different accents, okay? So you have the New Zealand, you have Australian, you have British, and even in Britain, there are lots of different types of accents. Then you have American, and America also has lots of different accents. So I guess it depends which one you find easiest to pronounce. Some people like to go for the American accent, you know, and especially since there is so much, there's so much online that you can watch with movies and YouTube and everything like that. It's a great way to get familiar with different pronunciation features. Okay, but anyway, to increase your score for pronunciation, the general guideline is pronounce words as clearly as possible. Record your speech and work on the words that you spell incorrectly. So what this means is that basically if you were to give a short recording on your phone and then listen to it and wrote out the words, which words were spelt incorrectly, and usually that's a good indicator of how you're saying those words incorrectly as well. Doesn't always work, but for some of the words you can do that. The next one is stress words and sentences correctly. So stressing words means giving the right importance or emphasis to the word in the sentence. Use correct intonation. So this is when your voice goes up at the end or down at the end. Last week we looked at, or a couple of weeks ago, we looked at when you ask a question, your voice goes up at the end. And when you have finished saying what you want to say, your voice goes down. So that's called a high pitch, and that's called a low pitch. Okay, so try to be easily understood by the examiner. That's a great tip, but you don't really know if you're easily understood by an examiner who knows how you sound. The best way to do that is to ask a native speaker to listen to your pronunciation. So try and get a native speaker to give you some feedback if possible. All right, so that is obviously also worth 25% of the whole score is your pronunciation. And lastly, we come to grammatical range and accuracy. How good is your grammar? How good is your grammar? So to increase your grammar score, you need to try to avoid grammar mistakes if you can. Not always easy because you might not be aware that you're making grammar mistakes, but if you can try and be accurate, that's good. They also say that you use more advanced grammatical structures such as passive voice, direct speech, a variety of tenses, different verb tenses, and conditional sentences. Sentences are, for example, when you use the word would, so that's an example there. I would go to Spain if I had enough money. So this is called the second conditional. Right. So using a variety of conditionals such as the zero, the first, the second, and if you know how to use the third conditional, then these are likely to increase your grammar score because you are showing that you have a wide range of structures. You're able to use a wide range of structures. Okay, whoops. So now that we've had a look at the 4 criteria, just go back over that again. So we've got fluency and coherence. Being able to speak fluently means talking without stopping and using correct discourse markers and linking words. Then we have lexical resource, which is your vocabulary range, and being able to paraphrase as well. If you can paraphrase, that will increase your score for vocabulary. And then pronunciation, how naturally you sound, whether you use some correct intonation and stress. And then grammatical range and accuracy. How wide is your range and how many errors do you make when you are speaking? Okay, so let's move on to the next part now of the lesson, which is to do with pronunciation. So I just want to read this out to you carefully. When we write English, each word is separate. There are spaces between the words, right? But that's not how we speak English. If we did, it might be easier to understand, but we would sound like robots. No. Okay, so remember, when we speak English, although, yes, there are some pauses, we bump the words together, okay? We bump the words together. We never speak like robots because we are not robots. We are humans. And when we're speaking, we push the words together so that if you're not familiar with the words, you might think, what word is that person saying? I don't understand that word. I don't know what that word is. So that's why it's important to kind of know a few of the pronunciation features in English. So when these words bump into each other, certain things can happen that affects the sounds. For example, T, the letter T and D sounds disappear between consonants. Okay, so a consonant is all the letters in the alphabet which are not the vowels. So they would be letters like B, C, D, F. Those are consonants, okay? But the vowels are A, E, I, O, and U. Those are the vowels. It doesn't look like vowels. Okay, so what they're saying here is that the T and the D sounds can disappear when you put them with consonants. For example, mashed potato. So there we have a D. I'm going to make that a bit clearer, sorry. There we have a D and there we have a P. So mashed potato. We don't say mashed potato. We say mashed potato. And it almost sounds like we're saying mashed potato without a D and without a P. For example, mashed potato sounds like that, mashed potato. So the D sound has gone. Okay, mashed potato. It's not mashed potato, it's mashed potato. We're still sounding the P, but we're not doing the D. Okay, so little things like this, you can see that these are consonants, a D and a P, and the D gets removed. All right, another example of how sounds can change is when a consonant links with a vowel. Okay, so here we have an N, which is a consonant, and here we have an E, which is a vowel. So we don't separate those two words. We don't say an egg like a robot. We say an egg. an egg. And then it sounds like one word, doesn't it? An egg, an egg, an egg. So hopefully, Neela, as you're watching me, you can be practicing these words as well. An egg. Certain vowel sounds can link with certain other vowel sounds by adding sounds. So that means that we add sounds when we have two vowels together. So for example, the shoe is, we've got E as a vowel, I as a vowel. But when we say those two words together, it sounds quite different. It sounds like the shoe is, and it sounds like we're adding a W. Isn't that weird? The shoe is, the shoe whiz, the shoe whiz. So it's almost like we've made up this new word, which is whiz, the shoe whiz, okay? But really all we're saying is the shoe is, the shoe is, all right? Shoe is. Does that make sense? Another example, although it's not a vowel, would be the showers. And that then becomes the showers, whiz, show whiz, show whiz. Not show is, but show is. So we push them together, we bump them together, and they sound different. Okay. Another sound that I want to talk to you about is called the schwa. Schwa. It's a very, very, very important sound in the English language. In fact, it probably is the most common sound in the English language. Okay, the schwa. All right, and the schwa looks like that there. If you're looking at the phonemic chart, looks like a funny little backwards E. And I just want you to listen to how I say this chunk of language. A piece of cake, a piece of cake, a piece of cake, a piece of cake. I'm saying this, a piece of cake. I'm saying a piece of cake. But I'm not saying a piece of cake, am I? I'm saying a piece of cake, a piece of cake. I'm saying a piece of cake. I'm almost saying it like that, a piece of cake. Because that sound with a and of is called the schwa sound, and it sounds the same, okay, for a and of, a piece of cake. So, hang on. Okay, we'll come back to the schwa in a little bit. Let me just go back to the next slide. So these are all features of what we call connected speech. We've looked at the T and the D and how that can change when they're put together. Mashed potato, mashed potato. We lose the sound of the D there. Mashed potato becomes just the potato is sounded. Then we've looked at a vowel combined with a consonant, an egg, rather than an egg, becomes an egg. And then we've looked at how sounds can be added so that it makes it sound more natural, such as the shoe is, the shoe is. So you've got a w sound there, the shoe is. And then we looked very briefly at the little sound schwa, which is important because it is the most common sound in the English language. Okay, so these are all features of what we call connected speech. Natural speech is full of these features, and for native speakers, these changes happen automatically. So you don't even think about it when you're speaking. The more you can get used to listening to and speaking English, the more naturally they'll come to you too. When it talks about they, it's talking about the features that I've talked about today. But my advice is that the most important thing to pay attention to is schwa. Getting schwa in the right place is the first step to getting English pronunciation right. Going back to this expression before, a piece of cake, it's an expression and it means something is really easy to do, a piece of cake. It also means a piece of cake, right? You have a cake, then you cut a piece and then it's delicious. But a piece of cake is an expression we use to describe something that is easy to do. And it means, So listen again to the words a and of. They are actually pronounced the same. A piece of cake, a piece of cake. What's the sound and are those words stressed? A piece of cake. The words a and of are both pronounced as schwa and they're not stressed, okay? They're not stressed. If I say a piece of cake, I'm not making that a sound loudly. I'm not making the of sound loudly. A piece of cake. Or I could say a piece of cake. Would you like a piece of cake? Or would you like a piece of cake? All right, so in the first sentence, if I stress piece, would you like a piece of cake? I'm making piece sound louder. If I say, would you like a piece of cake? I'm making cake sound louder. But I'm not pronouncing strongly a or of, the schwa. I'm not saying it strongly at all. I'm just piece of cake. Would you like a piece of cake? The a and the of, the schwa sound, never gets pronounced strongly. Are you guys following? Just type in the text box if you can. Okay. All right. So the words a and of are both pronounced as schwa and they're not stressed. This sound, schwa, is the most common sound in the whole English language. It's so common that it even has its own name, schwa. Now, it can be difficult to hear the schwa because it's never stressed, right? It's never said loudly. However, it's a vowel sound that's used in many grammar words like articles and prepositions. So here are some more examples. I like a cup of tea in the morning. I like a cup of tea in the morning. I like a cup of tea. I like a cup of tea. So can you hear me? I'm not saying I like a cup of tea. I'm saying I like a cup of tea, a cup of tea, a cup of tea, a cup of tea, a cup of tea. But I like a cup of tea in the morning. I like a cup of tea in the morning. Would you get a packet of biscuits? Could you get a packet of biscuits? Could you get a packet of biscuits? A packet of biscuits. Okay, I'm not saying could you get a packet of biscuits. I'm saying could you get a packet of biscuits? A packet a packet a. All right, so that schwa sound is very soft and it's not stressed. And we've seen so far that it's used for a, for a, and it's used for of. Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a packet of biscuits? Okay, and you'll find that that's the same all throughout the world, English-speaking world. That is not unique to any country. Another example, can you give it to me? 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 Ta, ta, can you give it to me? So we've got the sound of the T, right? The T, can you give it to me? But it's not to, it's ta. Can you give it to me? Ta, can you give it to me? Can you give it to me? Not can you give it to me? Can you give it to me? Ta. I had an apple for lunch today. I had an apple. I had an apple for lunch. I had an apple for lunch today. For lunch. For. I had an apple for lunch today. Not I had an apple for lunch today. I had an apple for lunch today. 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 Like that. Today. I had an apple for lunch today. Does this make sense of Neil and Nila? Is this new for you? Makes sense? Okay. All right. So it's called the schwa and it's an unstressed sound and it's used for lots of different prepositions such as for and to. Okay. Now we're going to have a look at what's called the assimilation of T followed by J. Listen to how I say this. It's nice to meet you. 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 Am I saying it's nice to meet you? Or am I saying it differently? The word meet ends in the sound T, and the word you begins with J, don't they? Or do they? Listen again. It's nice to meet you. 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 So T followed by, so when we've got T followed by something like the word you, T followed by you, changes the sound, all right? We've got a new sound coming in. We've got the J sound. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Some people might even say it like that. Chew. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. But it's not nice to meet you. It's never that one. It's always nice to meet you or nice to meet you. You. Do or chew. Okay. That shirt won't suit you. That shirt won't suit you. Won't suit you. Won't suit you. That shirt won't suit you. Don't you want to come to the party? Don't you? Don't you want to come to the party? That shirt won't suit you. No. That shirt won't suit you. Suit you. Don't you want to come to the party? So can you hear the difference? I bet your boss doesn't know. I bet your boss doesn't know. I bet your boss doesn't know. Can I get you anything? Can I get you anything? Can I get you anything? Okay, you following so far, guys? All right, the last part of the lesson today, we're going to have a look at what grammar you need to get an Ielts speaking band score 7. Here are just some recommendations, we could say, for how to improve your grammar score. So to show the examiner that you have enough grammar to get a band score 7 in the Ielts speaking test, you need to use different kinds of complex grammar. Complex grammar. So what is complex grammar? Complex grammar includes complex verb phrases. For example, verbs with 2 or more words, and that include a word like may, could, will, or have, or has. So for example, I could have studied in Australia, but it was too expensive. So there we've got a modal verb there followed by the verb to have. I could have studied in Australia, but it was too expensive. Or you could also say, I should have studied in Australia, or I might have studied in Australia. Something like that, where you've got 2 verbs together. So that's called a complex verb phrase. Another type of phrase that is good to use is called a complex noun phrase. So that's nouns with 2 or more words, and that include a main noun with it, with other words connected to it. So for example, let's look at this. It's a bit hard to see here. When I'm putting the orange, we've got the poor people of the society suffer most. Okay, that's the sentence that we're looking at. The poor people of the society suffer most. Okay, let's have a look at all the different words in the sentence. So we've got the, which is called a determiner. Then we've got poor, which is an adjective, but it's also a pre-modifier in the sentence. Then we've got people is the head noun, and society is the post modifier. It's a lot of grammar terms for you, I know. You don't really need to worry about it. But what you can see is that a simple sentence would include one noun, one head noun. For example, the dog is brown. Okay, so this is what we call a simple sentence. All right, now if we include other things about the dog, such as the fluffy dog who belongs to the man is very cute. The fluffy dog who belongs to the man is very cute. So we're still talking about the dog as the head noun, but we've included other parts to the sentence to give it more detail. And this is what is called a complex noun phrase. A complex noun phrase. A complex noun phrase. So it's nouns with two or more words, and that include a main noun with other words. The poor people of the society suffer most. So people is the head noun, and then we've also got another noun here, but it's not the head noun. It's the post modifier. People, the poor people of the society suffer most. Okay, it may seem pretty confusing, but basically this is what we are looking at with complex sentences. Okay, so we've looked at complex verb phrases, complex noun phrases. Now let's just have a look at simple complex sentences, which are sentences that begin with when, if, or although, or sentences containing a relative clause. So just for you to brush up your grammar, a complex sentence contains an independent clause and a dependent clause. An independent clause and a dependent clause. The dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction, such as because. The word because. Because the boys went to the park, they did not go to the zoo. The boys did not go to the zoo because they went to the park. Okay, so subordinating conjunctions are words like this: after, before, because, although, when, since, if, whenever, unless, while, so that, even though. So these are all called subordinating conjunctions. So that brings us to the end of the part about grammar, and if you're hoping to get at least a 7 for speaking, then obviously your score would need to be an average of 7. So let's say you get a 6 for fluency, and then you get an 8 for vocabulary, and then you get a 7 for grammar, and then you get a 7 for pronunciation. That comes to 14, 21, 28. That's a total of 28, and then 28 divided by, where's my divided by sign? Divided by 4 equals, 28 divided by 4 equals 7. So that would be your score. So if you did happen to do quite well at grammar and not so well at the other category, in the other categories, you could still get the 7. Okay, so they always put the 4 scores together, add them up, and then divide by 4. Okay, so I feel now like maybe, I'm not sure if you missed the beginning of the lesson, but I'll just show you quickly again. We've got fluency and coherence, which is 25%. Then we've got lexical resource, which is vocabulary. Then we've got pronunciation, and then we've got grammatical range and accuracy. So all of these put together would make up 100%.